Welcome, everyone, to this edition of Devotions with Chaplain Dan. I'm Dan Bonner, the chaplain for resident advocacy, they call me. And of course, many of you know that my wife Sue and I are also residents here at Australia. It's in that context I come to you today for our second session on ways and methods for the practice of listening for God. Last time I talked about the need that maybe exists today in any of us. Certainly I feel it in myself. For a closer, more secure, more hopeful conversation from God and with God about the state of things. Yes, there is tumult on many corners today. And I've already told you, it's easy to get discouraged, even despondent and depressed. Last time we talked about listening for God through a more disciplined prayer experience. Today, I'd like to raise a second, if you will, method for listening for God in these troubled days. And that is, we can perhaps best listen for God as we listen to our neighbors. Oh, come on, Dan. You don't know my neighbor. Well, no, I don't. But the truth is, I'm not your neighbor's neighbor. I have my own neighbors and my own opportunities to listen better to them. I can cite illustrations. It makes me chuckle sometimes to think about it. If I spend enough time talking to Michelle or Debbie in the independent living at the front desk, or at the front desk of the assisted living, or of our skilled nursing facility, if I just, as I sometimes do as chaplain, just hang around there for a little while, it's almost certain that I will hear someone come up to the desk, talk to the good receptionists we have about their neighbors. One, I'm not going to tell you which desk it was, but not too long ago, I was sitting nearby in an easy chair, and someone came up to the receptionist, just so upset their shoulders swayed back and forth. And I could hear their voice. I was sitting about 15, 20 feet away. I could hear their voice. "You would not believe what my neighbor is doing." And I perked up and listened. And this person went on to explain chapter and verse about the noise that comes from the neighbor's apartment. Through the wall. It must come through the wall. Our doors are shut. I never even see the person, the one at the desk said. But good night, late at night, that person plays the most awful music as loud as they can, and it's right next to my bed in my bedroom. I am tired, sick and tired of not being able to get to sleep because of my neighbor. Well, at that point, I went up and introduced myself and offered if I could help. No. They're helping me here, is what the resident said, meaning the staff. And God bless our staff for being so attentive, so encouraging, and sometimes just absorbing what we give them. Well, I tell that story because I didn't have an occasion. I didn't have an opportunity. The person wasn't interested in talking to the chaplain. They wanted something done about their neighbor. But if I could have talked, I would have simply asked, have you ever offered to your neighbor a note under the door, an invitation to come and have coffee in the bistro or a sandwich? Have you ever offered to that neighbor a chance to just sit together and listen to them tell about their life, but in the process share some of the challenges that your neighbor faces and feels? It will be a sad day when in our busy culture we stop having time or even think about listening to our neighbor. Now, what does that have to do with listening for God? It has this to do, I suggest, and invite you simply to think about it. If you sit and listen to a disgruntled or even a new or in some way a neighbor you haven't quite learned everything about their life and challenges and aspirations, if you listen, go a little deeper and let them tell you, some way, I don't understand the transactional way this happens. I don't understand the auditory way this happens, but I do understand that if you listen closely enough to your neighbor, in your heart, you could sense God speaking about what to do, what to say, how to help the neighbor. And suddenly your attitude, you discovered, has changed from intervention that brings about the change you want in your neighbor to being drawn to your neighbor, that you might be somehow a worthy representative of God's love with them. The Latin American theologian Gustavo Gutierrez, and I'm not quoting that to sound somehow like a know-it-all. But Gustavo Gutierrez is famous for helping us learn through his writings that the best way to find freedom, or he would call it liberation, to be attentive to God's word, to be really receptive to it, is to spend time among the poor, among the disheartened, among the angry, among the grieving in your world. Gutierrez challenges us, and I'm kind of jumping on his message today. When we find someone in our community troubled or upset or getting on our last nerve because of their behavior, we do well to listen. To listen. Because the voice we can hear through the need of our neighbor may well be the voice of God calling us to a new way, a new response, a new understanding, a more hope-filled relationship. Yes, we could hear the voice of God. We can listen for the voice of God well, my brothers and sisters, right here in the Australia community, if we listen to our neighbor. Give it a try. I'm Chaplain Dan, and this is the second of our 3 sessions on listening for God. I hope you'll be back with me next time. But it's been a joy to talk to you today about the way God can be heard in our hearts. God bless you. I'll see you next time.